you're creating a community there whether you realize it or not. And if you're just mindlessly scrolling and filling yourself up with negative things, then, I mean, that's something to take into consideration too.
Hi, skin friend. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Skin Reel. I have a treat for you. I had the pleasure of being on her podcast a couple weeks ago. It's called Mom Guilt. If you have not checked it out, be sure to go listen to that right after this episode. If you are a mom or just a human struggling with guilt, you're going to get so much value out of her podcast. I really love it. But today I get the pleasure of having Vanna Padilla on. She is a nurse practitioner who has focused in dermatology for almost a decade. And we are going to be just talking about what is mom guilt, how she came to start her podcast, and how it relates to what she does day in and day out as a nurse practitioner in dermatology, and so many great tips and pointers and pearls for really anyone who is struggling with perfectionism and the desire to have it all and maybe feels like they're falling behind. I love how real and candid she gets. And I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So stay tuned. I'm so thrilled to now have you on my podcast. You were really gracious to let me be on yours a couple weeks ago, and that was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for being on the Skin Reel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on yours now.
It's so much to talk about. I love your podcast, first of all, Mom Guilt. I love the name, and it's something that I can't get away from, right? It just seems so prevalent with women who are moms, especially trying to juggle a lot of things. Maybe it's work outside the home, maybe it's work inside the home. And of course, like COVID, that just took, a tailspin on everything. So what inspired you to create this podcast, Mom Guilt?
It's really become a buzz term, right? But if anyone hears that term mom guilt and you are a mom, you immediately identify with that. But I also think it's important to point out that even if you're not a mom, we've all experienced the societal guilt as well. And I got to a point in life where I just had this epiphany moment of I'm doing everything, it seems like, for everyone else. And I'm trying to please everyone else. So I think at the core, it comes down to feeling like you have to do it all, feeling like you have to do it your best, and then feeling like you have to please everyone while you're doing it. So I wanted to create a community around, because we can't get rid of the mom guilt, right? We can't get rid of the mom guilt. We can't get rid of the societal guilt, but building a community that's rather than reactive, proactive, and creating a life that we never thought possible, and just those tangible tips that we can take away and help each other to master the mom guilt instead of trying to get rid of it.
I love how you put that. And you're so true on so many levels, right? The societal guilt, the need for perfectionism, which happens to so many people, and feeling like we have to be perfect all the time. We have to portray this image that we've got it all together at all times. And it's not reality. It's not realistic. And you're so true about having a community. I find my community a lot of times are my friends, my family, my spouse, but I also love having a wider community online. And I would say if there's one good thing about the pandemic, right, it helped us realize that we can have these online communities and be really successful with them, and that they can be really impactful and meaningful.
Right. And that's one of my things, because I think there's 3 major components to mastering the mom guilt, and that is becoming proactive rather than reactive with the routines that you create. But then secondly, the most important thing is who you're surrounding yourself with, and what is that echo chamber, right? What are you filling yourself up with? Because we talked about this on mom guilt, but a lot of times we'll go to social media, open up our phones and start scrolling, and our echo chamber within even that, and you're creating a community there whether you realize it or not. And if you're just mindlessly scrolling and filling yourself up with negative things, then, I mean, that's something to take into consideration too, right?
It's hard not to, right? Even when I'm looking through it and I'm doing it for research or whatever, it's hard not to see images like, oh man, like I didn't do such a fancy vacation, or
No.
I didn't have such a, I didn't get that for my birthday, or it's hard not to compare, even when you're aware that you shouldn't be doing it and you're a smart adult. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, because there are people that I like to follow, but do you do that favorites list to where
Oh,
if
no.
I don't know where it is on the top. I think it's on the top right-hand corner of like Instagram specifically. And then even on TikTok, there's a following tab now. So just make sure that you're following the people that, I mean, it's like you said, it's hard not to compare, but specifically on Instagram, because that's the more aesthetic one where people are just showing their highlight reel and the pretty parts. I mean, guilty of doing that as well. So you can star the ones that you want to see within your feed the most. And to me, that becomes an echo chamber of positivity and then not really doing the comparison as much.
No, that's a great tip. I know on Facebook too, you can click like they'll say like see less of
Yes.
these kind of posts,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And sometimes that's helpful too. But yeah, if you're following people who constantly make you feel bad about yourself, you come away and you're like not feeling good, then that's probably someone to unfollow or not put in your favorites, right?
Right. And I feel guilty sometimes. Like it's someone that I've been following, and I don't think people are doing that on purpose, but I would just really pay attention to your thoughts. And if you do get this like pang of jealousy or pang of sadness, don't feel guilty for unfollowing. And it's nothing personal to that person. It's just protecting your mindset, right?
So we're both in dermatology, right? You've been a nurse practitioner in dermatology for 9+ years. And we see this a lot in patients who come in and they sometimes will bring me a picture and want to look like this person. And the picture is clearly photoshopped and edited. And it's not reality. But unfortunately, when we look at it, we think, oh, that's reality. We think not having pores is normal. And everyone has pores, right? No matter how good your skin is, everyone's got pores. You can't erase them completely. But I feel like being in our world of dermatology, we see this a lot.
But I think that's the beauty of being a provider for people and trying to bring them back down to what reality really is. Because even right now, I've got lights on me and I'm like, before we joined this chat and I was waiting, I was thinking, oh, I really like how my face looks, but it's because I don't have shadows and we all have natural shadows. So like we all fall into that trap. But I think that's the beautiful relationship of a patient-provider relationship of you saying, hey, we can get you as close to your goal as you want or as we possibly can. But you also have to realize that a lot of things out there are filtered, or even if they're not filtered, it's the bright lights, not creating shadows. Those that it was that Alex Earl light that went viral. I have the Alex Earl light, but you have to think about those things, like people that are videoing themselves on TikTok, on Instagram, and doing the reels or the videos. If there's a really bright light, they've probably got that viral Alex Earl light, and that's what's making their skin look so perfect.
I do think it's so important to set realistic expectations, just also for someone's mental health, but also so they're not disappointed. And there's so much we can do with cosmetics and aesthetics and the world of vitality and regeneration, but everything has limits. And so it's important to make sure that your expectations are realistic.
Right. And I tell people that because people will ask a lot of times how you can find the right dermatology provider for you, whether that's they're suggesting skincare, topical prescriptions, or they're injecting you. And my biggest thing is find someone that will tell you no.
Yeah.
Because if you're finding a provider that's a yes man that will say yes to you, number one, years down the road, you're going to look back and think, because it's a slippery slope, right? We all start injecting ourselves or getting injections or even just doing the lasers and skincare where it's such gratification that we're like, oh, I want more of that. But then down the road, and I saw this with myself, I used to get filler multiple times a year. And I got to the point where I had to start dissolving it because I wasn't going to a consistent injector. Whoever was in the office with me, I'd say, hey, can you inject my temples really quick? Because I thought that I needed it. And then down the road, I got to thinking, I've done all of this and I'm starting to look a little bit off. And I wish I would have had someone to tell me, no, actually, you don't really need that. But I do think you need X, Y, or Z. So finding someone that's going to be honest with you, even though it may not be what you want to hear, and you're going to hear the answer, no, I'm not going to do that. I think that's a really important quality to have in a provider.
So right. And the consistency is key, right? With your skincare, your exercise, your diet, stress management, sleep, and also who you see. If you're always bouncing around, I feel like you're starting from scratch. And I would recommend seeing someone whose aesthetic look sort of aligns with yours. If you really want over the top, overdone, someone who's more conservative isn't going to be the right person, and vice versa. So I love that. Consistency is key. And that person is going to know what you looked like when you started. And that's another thing I see, not just with dermatologists, dermatology providers, and patients, is you start to forget what you look like before you started doing everything. And it is a slippery slope, right? And you're always like, ooh, let's fix this imperfection. Ooh, let's fix that one. Let's do this. And soon, a couple years later, you don't even really resemble how you looked in the beginning. So I do find that sort of constant obsession over how you look, over every little imperfection can be dangerous, because you run the risk of, I would say, like the Michael Jackson phenomenon, right? Where it goes too far. And we see this all with celebrities, right? They're beautiful and they just take it. They're obviously doing stuff, but then it's just that one thing they do. It's a little too much. And then they don't look like themselves.
And I it's funny you say that, because I think I just watched the Drew Barrymore show and Megan Fox was on there. I love Megan Fox. I think she is beautiful. I also love her vulnerability, because her face has changed a lot, and she'll tell you that too, but she'll also tell you that she kind of has like a body dysmorphia type issue, to where she looks at herself in the mirror and she constantly thinks that something needs to be changed. So I would challenge anybody who is listening. I think it's totally fine to get injections. Clearly, I get injections personally. I give injections. But also, are you finding your self-worth in that? But also, is there something mentally that you need to dive into? And that wraps it all back up to the mom guilt, the societal guilt. Are you doing this because it does make you feel better, not to a point where you find your worth in it? Or are you doing it because you're scrolling social media, you're seeing it, and you just want it done because other people are doing it? Or someone makes a comment about your lips or something like that. Get down to the core of really why you're doing these things. And I think that that's helpful.
Yeah, knowing your self-worth is key. If you don't have that, no amount of cosmetic procedures are going to get you there. They're not. I think of aesthetics as like the icing on the cake. Totally optional. Some people don't like icing. They don't want icing, right? I like a little icing, not too much, but I do like icing. I find that when I do little things like a little bit of Botox or a little bit of sculpture or filler, I do feel better about myself. But to your point, if you're all, your self-worth is tied into how you look, you're going to change over the decades, over your life. And it's really hard to feel good about yourself as you see those changes. And if you're looking for the cosmetic procedure to be the answer to all that, you're going to be really, really disappointed.
I've actually found that with not only cosmetics, but even people with eczema or psoriasis or acne. It's like there's always going to be that emotional component. You can't run from it. So if is something you're suppressing, that's another thing that I talk about a lot on the podcast. It's just kind of getting the right mindset. And if you don't even know where to start on that, there's several things that you could do. Listening to podcasts like this is amazing just to get that into your mind. But yeah, I find that on not only cosmetics, but medical conditions as well.
You had mentioned earlier that there were 3 components to guilt, I think. And you mentioned the first 2, right? Or one being proactive, not reactive, and then making sure you have your echo chamber is reflecting values that you want. What is the third one?
So the third one is mindset, and it's doing that inner work. And a lot of people can find that daunting. I personally found that daunting. I did not do counseling, and counseling and therapy is not for a lot of people, but I didn't even do counseling until my 30s. You know, it's not something that I even considered because I think a lot of us come from a generation that is very much mind over matter. And I'm thankful that we have a space now in social media. There's good and bad to it, but the good is that it's not as much as a taboo to talk about mental health. But as far as your mindset goes, it's really just putting things into your mind so that when you're upset, you're frustrated, or you do feel the guilt coming on, that it comes out when you need it. And there's a couple ways you can do that. Counseling and therapy is great, but something that I have been obsessed with lately for a more positive mindset is an app called Superhuman app. And it's essentially for the person that maybe wants to get into meditation. It's a little bit more daunting, but these are more positive affirmations, and you can listen to and do these things while you're doing everyday life. There's a walking one. There's one while you're doing your skincare in the morning and night. There is one when you're getting ready for bed. And it's basically, it can be anywhere from 3 minutes to 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And it's really just reframing your mindset, becoming more conscious of your thoughts, and putting positive affirmations, or even if you feel like overstimulated, it's calming affirmations. So you can use it for any walk of life, but that third component to mastering the mom guilt is definitely shifting your mindset.
And it's never too early to start, right? Teaching our kids this now can hopefully help them be more aware of it as they're older, and not have to be my age when they're finally coming to terms with, wait a minute, mindset actually does matter. I went to a Tony Robbins event. Do you ever follow Tony Robbins?
Yes, I've never been to an event, but I bet it was amazing.
You know, at first I had like bad attitude about it. I was like, this is weird. It seems cultish. How can this really be so amazing? But it was really, really powerful. And I started reading more about him, and I think he coached like Serena Williams back to her comeback a couple years ago. And a lot of athletes have worked with him, which at first I was thinking, like, why would an athlete spend time with Tony Robbins? They need to be spending time with their coach and strength training and all of that. But then I'm like, duh, they're doing that because so much is mind, right? And I would say maybe even 80% of what they do and how you win and how you show up is your mind. And so getting that right is huge. So I really had my eyes open to that by attending that. I think it was the Unleash the Power Within. So definitely an amazing event. If anyone has the chance to go, or if you have the chance to go, Van, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I definitely want to do something like that. And it's funny you say that. I wish I knew the golfer's name, but we were watching a series on Netflix of golf, and my husband was watching, and I caught the part where there was someone that was really struggling within his golf game, and the only thing that he changed was that he got a mindset coach. And now he's, I think, back on the PGA Tour, and really that's the only thing that he shifted was his mindset.
It's amazing. It really is. Another anecdote was that there was a study with basketball players. I think they trained for the same amount of time, and then one group was supposed to visualize making that 3-point shot or visualize winning. And that was the only difference. And they performed significantly better just because they were visualizing that in their head, which, yeah, I thought was so cool. So I love that. And I love that app suggestion that you gave, just to start speaking to yourself kindly and saying positive things and having gratitude. That's another thing I try to do with my kids at night. I think we spend so much of our time focused on what didn't go well, the frustrations we had at work or whatever, social interactions. But when I actually lay down with my kids at night, and we do this right before bed, they don't actually let me. I try to miss it some nights, and they call me out on it. And I have them think of the top things that they're grateful for that day. And I usually say just give me the top 3, but once you start, then we're like, 10, 12, 15. It's amazing how once you start to think about, wait a minute, even though this didn't go well today, all this other stuff did. And I'm grateful for that. So I find that to be helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that because I do often come from the lack mindset. But then, like you said, when you start to train your mind to see the good and okay, at the end of the day or at the beginning of my day, I'm always going to put down 3 things that I'm grateful for. You just start to see more evidence of that and more abundance of that. And I personally have done that too. And it tremendously helps. So if anyone's listening and you don't even know where to start, I think that is an amazing tip, Dr. Mina, to at least just write down 3 things every day that you are grateful for or that went right for you that day.
Yeah, that's one thing I need to get better about writing it. I say it in my head and I'll say, oh, that's good enough, right? I don't have to actually write it down. But really, they show that writing it out is more powerful. But hey, you can be like me, start small. If you have kids, I think it's a great exercise to do with them. We do it right before bed, right before prayers, just as sort of a last thing before we end our day. And it's a nice little routine that we have. But yeah, I should actually write it down. But, I'm taking baby steps, Vanna.
Yeah, well, writing seems so archaic at this point in time because you're either used to just typing it. There is a new journal app. I don't know if you've noticed on the iPhone. So you could even type it if you want to. But I do personally feel like writing is more beneficial as well. And I'm sure there's many studies on that. And we used to write everything, but I started to write within the last month because I'm doing a new devotional and it has like a question answer type thing. And when you start to write, you're like, my hand's cramping a little bit. I'm not used to doing this anymore.
It's exhausting. Well, and I've got pretty bad handwriting, but I love the idea of being able to go back and look at where you were a year ago, where you were a month ago. I think that is cool. That's one of the benefits of writing. But hey, maybe you could just do the voice memo in that journaling app, and maybe that would suffice as well, so you don't get those hand cramps. Vanna, so many great tips. I love all of this. And I want to circle back to the first thing you said about how to help manage mom guilt, and that was to be proactive rather than reactive. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And the way that I have done that, and I'm sure there's many different ways, but the way that I've done that, because we can all think about times where we have gotten out of our routine and maybe our house is a little messy, or we didn't get to do our morning skincare or nighttime routine, and I'm just not pleasant to be around. And that's not on my husband or my children or anybody I'm around at work. It's because I didn't take the steps to be proactive and get in the things that I needed to get in that day. So I divide my day up into really 3 chunks because I am working full-time currently still as a dermatology nurse practitioner. So during that work block of time, that's what I'm focused on. But the other 2 blocks of time are my morning routines and my evening routines. So I don't know if you have your morning routines and evening routines, but I am a stickler, especially about my nighttime, but I'm not as good about my morning routine.
See, I'm the opposite. But I love that. And that's something I've gotten into as well, like just being really intentional with my time. So in the past, I would just waste time or with either busy work or things I knew were wasting time, like scrolling or TV. And so now I go to bed earlier, I wake up early, and I get a good bit of work done before my kids wake up. So my morning routine is solid, but my nighttime routine is not as good. So I'd love to hear more about yours.
I think we could learn from each other. My morning routine is really, because I'm not a morning person, and that I'm assuming you are a morning person.
You know what? I am not. So when I retire, I'm probably going to stay up till like 1 or 2 in the morning and sleep till 9, but that doesn't work for the world I'm in right now. I'm not a morning person, but now I truly look forward to my time in the morning because it's peaceful, it's quiet, it's all to me. It's before the world has woken up and people are demanding my time. But the trick is you have to go to bed early. That's where I screwed up, right? I would try to go to bed at 11, 12, sometimes 1. and then wonder why I couldn't wake up at 5:36 in the morning.
I do think that your morning routine starts with your evening routine.
Yeah.
And I really have a good evening routine. So I think it's really just self-discipline of when my alarm goes off, I need to just make sure I'm getting up. But to your point, I do love when I actually do carry it through because that is the me time. As women, especially women that work full time as well, even if you don't work full time and you're a full time stay at home mom, kudos to you if you are that, because I think that's the hardest job in the
Yeah,
world.
you have no break. You there's no off switch for that.
Yes. So you're always being asked of things. Like it's emotionally draining. So that morning time is your time. And when I do wake up in the morning, early in the morning, I will fix my warm lemon juice with water to get my gut health going. And then I will fix my coffee. I do make sure that I get a little bit of protein in before I intake my coffee so it doesn't spike my blood sugar. I used to not be able to drink coffee if I figured out it's the protein piece. Get a little bit of protein in, and then you don't kind of get the racing heart, the sweaty armpits, stuff like that. So I'll do that, and then I'll either do, right now I'm doing a devotional, but then if I don't have anything to do, then I'll just either read the Bible or do also some of the Superhuman app meditations or affirmations. It's really simple for a morning routine. Like you said, it's before the rest of the world wakes up, and then you're putting things into yourself so that throughout the day, if it becomes chaotic, you've already set the pace and the foundation for a calm, positive day.
Yeah.
But then in the evening, I mean, in the evening, I kind of split it into two parts. Once you get home and the kids are home, it's like a free for all. You can't really control it. It's time to spend with family, cook dinner, things like that. So I just let those things happen. Typically, we'll get home and the boys will play outside or in the house. My husband and I are cooking, getting ready for the next day. So really that's family time. And I think that's important because once your kids are in school, you only get to spend a certain amount of time with them during the week and being purposeful about that. So I don't stress about that part of the evening. But then when it comes to my personal evening routine, I mean, it is step for step. My husband jokes and he says, once she started that first step, she's gone. I'm not gonna see her. Our time is not together anymore.
Yeah.
But I start with a warm bath. Sometimes I do Epsom salt for the magnesium and sometimes I don't. And then when I get out, I do my full skincare routine, which is actually really simplistic. We talked about this on Mom Guilt podcast of super simple skincare routine is the way to go. And then I read for 30 minutes on my Kindle, not on my phone. You can do a physical book too, but I like to take my Kindle with me, especially when I travel. And there's no blue light that's kind of just signaling your reticular activating system to wake up, because that's what's happening when you're laying in bed and looking at your phone, thinking, oh, actually, my body should be awake right now instead of winding down like it should be. So my tip for that is to get a Kindle and read about 30 minutes before bed to calm your mind, and then go to sleep to where you're going to get about 8 hours, depending on what your body needs.
Yeah.
I know that was probably way more in depth than you wanted, but like that's my routine.
I'm impressed you get a bath. Like that sounds so luxurious. I love that.
Well, sometimes it is like a
quick
can
one.
you not do your bath and help me? But I do make sure, and sometimes I don't get a bath and I just go straight to reading, but there is something that's supposed to be calming my nervous system, preparing me to go to sleep. Yeah.
And also just simply having a routine. I started doing a routine with kids, right? Because I wanted them to have restful sleep. So yeah, doing a bath. Now they're older, so they shower, but I always read to them. That's sort of mom time. My husband does the morning with the kids because I go to work pretty early, and then I do the evening. And so we always read a book together. We do our gratitude and prayers. And then just like you, I have to read before I go to bed. I have a hard time shutting my brain down from the day. And so a book is better than Ambien, Benadryl. It is amazing. Even when I'm loving the book, it knocks me out. So I'm a big reader before bed. And yeah, I keep my phone in my closet, so I'm not even tempted to look at it because it is so tempting. I have to physically keep it away from me. But yeah, that's something in the last year or so, just not having the phone in the bed. And I also would mention neither of our morning routines involve checking email. I find that is something I just did reflexively. As soon as my alarm went off, I'd look at my phone. I'm still in bed. I'd check my emails. I check social media. And that is the absolute wrong way to start your day. That is not starting the day peaceful, calm, putting your important work first. That's following other people's work. And, one bad email, right, can just ruin your day. So that's just another tip I'd throw out. And also, I think sometimes when I started thinking I should do a morning routine, I'd read about these morning routines of like 30 minutes of this, ice cold plunge, then do this. Like it seemed really daunting. And I'm like, I don't want to do an ice cold plunge. Like I have no desire to do that. I know there are benefits to your body. I just don't want to do it. And I love Craig Ballantyne, if you've ever follow him, but he sort of says your people are doing their morning routine wrong. You don't need to do a cold plunge necessarily. You don't even need to exercise. I don't like to exercise in the morning. Do your most important work or whatever feeds you or motivates and drives you. Do that in the morning. Don't feel like you have to do these crazy exercise, cold plunges, all this if you don't want to.
That would 100% spike my cortisol. I think that would be worse than a bad email if I had to get in a cold plunge.
I would never get out of bed. Here's my tip for you, Vanna, that has really helped me wake up early because, again, I am not a morning person, but now I wake up at 5 a.m. almost like excited to get up. And even now on the weekends as well, I'm like, yeah, let's just start this day. But other than going to bed earlier, so I try to be reading by 10 o'clock in my bed. I have a light, and I don't remember the name, but it's on Amazon, but it wakes me up to light rather than a loud alarm. And I find I'm very sensitive to light when I sleep. And so a much more soothing way, it sort of gently starts to come on 30 minutes before my alarm actually goes off. And I find it's just a more pleasant way to start my day. So that's one thing I found really helpful as well. Of course, I still have my phone alarm in the closet as backup.
I actually do the exact same thing, and I'm not a morning person that I still don't get up, and my phone is in my bathroom. I put my phone in the bathroom too, and I physically will get up, press snooze, and turn off my hatch alarm light and get back in bed.
Oh,
it's
my
really
gosh.
at this point, it's a self-discipline thing, and I just have to make the decision to just stop doing that.
Yeah. Once I think you do it for like a week, then you'll probably actually enjoy it because you're going to be amazed how much stuff you get done.
I know you're motivating me. So I think this week has to be the week.
Give it a try. Well, Vanna, this has been a lot of fun. I feel like I could talk to you forever. I love your podcast. I love how you are normalizing this guilt, this drive for perfectionism that seems to be all over. If you could just give anyone listening who might be struggling with mom guilt, what are sort of your top 3 takeaways?
First and foremost, it's okay to feel the mom guilt. I think it brings us back into balance, gives us a little bit of self-awareness, but don't let it take over to where it's defining your self-worth, but also realizing you can manage it, but you cannot get rid of it.
Yeah.
So find those tips and tools to manage it. But then also, like we talked about, the community that you are surrounding yourself with. What is your echo chamber on your phone? The things that you are listening to, the people that you're surrounding yourself with. And as we just talked about, set yourself up for success and be proactive rather than reactive, setting up your morning and evening routines. And it doesn't have to be these elaborate things. I mean, start with 1 to 2 things, morning and night, and build upon it. I would highly recommend Atomic Habits, the book, and that can just be a starting place of how to even get started with morning and evening routines.
I love it. That is wonderful. And I'll also just say, learn to say no. The world's not going to end. Say no to stuff and free your plate up. Well, Vanna, this is so much fun. I'm going to link those items that you mentioned, the apps and everything. So many great tips. And tell us again your podcast name, your handle, so people can find you and follow you.
Yes, absolutely. So it is Mom Guilt Podcast. You can find Mom Guilt Podcast on Instagram, but then I also have my personal Instagram and TikTok at Vanna Padilla _NP. And then we're also on YouTube, so you can watch all of our episodes on YouTube, and that's under my personal name as well, Vanna Padilla. And then I do have a website for the dermatology portion. It's called @skincareexpert.com. And that's all about holistic acne coaching.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we'll leave all of that in the show notes so people can find you and follow you. And if you haven't listened to Mom Guilt yet, you are missing out. Be sure to go listen and like and subscribe to that as well. And we'll see you next week. That's all I've got for this week's episode of the Skin Real podcast. But here's some great news. One of the most valuable things you can do to help me and other new potential listeners to find my show is for you to both rate this show and leave a review. So, as a special bonus for you, if you leave me a review, take a screenshot and email it to info@theskinreal.com, and I will send you a thank you free PDF on skincare truths versus hype, because you know I love spreading the word of good, truthful skincare. And please be sure to share with your skin friends so that we can get the word out there about real skin. And until next time, remember, no matter where you are in your skincare journey, always remember to love the skin you're in, because real skincare from real experts can be real simple.